running around on stage with the Tesla stock price where the stock price had gone in half, and he was overjoyed. What an evil thing to do! What a creep! What a jerk! Like who derives joy?
Imagine a future where transportation not only changes the rules of the game, but also sets new standards for safety and technological capabilities. That future was tied to one vehicle, the Tesla Cybertruck. A product that was supposed to become a cult classic, an icon of progress, and a symbol that Tesla could change everything. But instead of challenging the automotive industry, the Cybertruck was confronted with a harsh reality, and everything we expected from this innovative marvel went awry. In this video, we'll tell you how Tesla, with its billions in investments and thousands of fans, survived the worst crisis in its history, and how even the most confident leader could not have escaped this crisis.
I mean, the things that he's doing is not trying to make America better. He's ruining our infrastructure, every department in our government he's ruining, and he's right now destroying our economy. He's taken away all of our allies. We're a pariah in the world.
As it turned out, the future we had been waiting for so long was not destroyed by a grand explosion or a catastrophic accident. It all happened much more trivially. Just one defect in the accelerator pedal caused tens of thousands of cars to be at risk. How did Tesla's perfect project collapse because of such a small thing? The answer lies in how the company made decisions when faced with insurmountable pressure, when promises on release dates became more important than safety.
Well, this feels more like a Tesla-only story when you look at just this fall in EV sales for them that they're suffering across Europe, down 45% in January. The wider EV market in Europe up 37%, so rivals are catching up and performing.
But the problem is not limited to this defect alone. Soon things got even worse. After the car was released for sale, it turned out to be not only unfit for use, but also completely dangerous. The cars began to accelerate abnormally, and drivers had no way of controlling the situation. What happened inside Tesla? Why did this defect go unnoticed during testing? How could this happen at a company that was considered a model of engineering excellence?
Outperforming as well in some cases, doing better than Tesla. And you just have to think, how much more is this a sustained issue for Tesla going forward, given the fact that you have Elon Musk, who's been very forthright in his opinions, particularly weighing in on politics, particularly in Europe. We've just had the European elections, which Musk has been very focused on. But across the piece, when you look at the performance for Tesla in Europe, it's not just in small countries. There are a lot of countries where Tesla has been performing badly, including in Germany, in the UK, where it has been lagging, and Spain as well.
The story doesn't end there. After the defect was discovered, a moment arrived that could have spelled the end for Tesla itself. The Gigafactory in Texas fell silent. Assembly work was suspended. Cars that had already been assembled were quarantined. This was not just a glitch in the production process, it was the collapse of the very essence of the company. But instead of admitting its mistake, Tesla did what it had so often done before. It remained silent, and this silence became even more alarming when it turned out that the company was not only hiding information from its customers, but also from its own engineers.
371, most were saying 350 to 360. Now they're coming in at 336,068. Production of 362,615. So for some point of reference here, you're going back to Q2, maybe Q1 of 2022 in terms of the last time that they had production this or deliveries this low for one quarter. So again, Tesla deliveries worse than expected at just over 336,000 deliveries in the first quarter. Guys, I'll send it back to you.
That's horrible. Can I just ask Phil, how about the Cybertruck? How's that doing? You got a little inventory there in the Cybertruck?
The situation became even more catastrophic when the government, investors, and even former employees began to stir up a scandal. This was no longer just about a failed product launch. It was the beginning of serious legal consequences for a company that had built its reputation on speed and innovation. What does this mean for Tesla itself? And who will now make concessions in this cruel world of high technology? Let's climb to the top with you to see how Tesla faced criticism and what may have been its last chance to regain trust. What decisions will be made, and how will they determine the fate of the company? You'll find out everything in this video.
That's from the European Automobile Manufacturers Association. People just choosing with their wallets to not buy Teslas because of that Musk-Trump association. And actually here in London, an activist group called Everyone Hates Elon actually have been hacking bus stop signs with posters. I actually passed one yesterday. First, I wasn't quite sure what was happening, but it said the words 0 to 1939 in 3 seconds. Illusion here, 0 to 60 in like 3 seconds or something. But this poster was alluding to the start of World War II, and the image was of Musk giving that hand salute that we saw at Trump's inauguration that many have attacked as a Nazi gesture. Musk, though, has neither admitted or denied what he was doing. But we're seeing the knock-on effect of that anti-Musk anger across Europe and in terms of sales.
The Tesla Cybertruck was created to be a true icon of the future. With its angular, sharp design and futuristic features, it was supposed to be a symbol of a new world of transportation, where Tesla's technology and engineering could overcome any limitations. For many, this car was not just another model from Tesla. It was the answer to the most ambitious questions plaguing the automotive industry, as tough as an armored vehicle, with capabilities that promised to change the perception of pickup trucks and SUVs. It was a truly ambitious project, backed by years of research, testing, and hyperbolic promises from Elon Musk himself. But instead of becoming the next step in automotive evolution, the Cybertruck found itself on the brink of disaster, and its journey turned into a tragedy related to what should have been its foundation: safety and reliability.
Teslas are being torched across the country. Dealerships shot up and set on fire. Spray paint to vandalize and make a statement. People in Southern California are getting notes on their Teslas, calling them complicit Nazis for owning electric cars.
From the outset, Tesla faced incredible pressure to get the car out on time. Although many engineers and managers at the company knew that the Cybertruck was far from ready, Musk's stubbornness and commitment to meeting deadlines led to the product being rushed into production. This decision raised doubts among engineers early on, who openly expressed concerns about the car's readiness for mass production. Not all components had undergone the necessary testing, and there were particular concerns about the vehicle's balance and stability. Numerous internal reports warned of potential risks, but these were ignored because the deadline did not allow for any delays.
Well, you will hear people over in Europe say the new Model Y, the Juniper, could be a difference maker. But that's been in that market now for more than a month. And you would think that you'd see a greater snapback if it's going to be a difference maker. Look, we could be wrong. It could be a difference maker once you get the sales for April, May, and June. But when you have a country like Norway, I think the sales were down something like 11% there. I mean, that's a very savvy EV consumer in Norway. And that's long been a strength for Tesla. Very small market, not huge volume, but I think almost all of the vehicles they sell there are electric. And they embrace Tesla long before others. And, the reports there are not encouraging.
However, one of the most critical mistakes was made during the material selection stage. The desired lightness and durability were the top priorities for engineers when they were looking for the perfect material for the accelerator pedal. The decision was made in a hurry to replace the standard metal with a lighter composite material, which was supposed to reduce the weight of the car and help save on production costs. However, this material proved to be much more flexible than planned, and under certain loads and operating conditions, the pedal could lock up, causing a malfunction that would jeopardize driver safety. A team of engineers, aware of the risks, suggested additional testing to ensure the reliability of the new component, but these suggestions were rejected. Due to enormous pressure and clear instructions from management, the launch had to go ahead on schedule, no matter what. Internal Tesla reports raised questions about the wisdom of such haste, but Musk continued to argue that a delay would mean falling behind competitors, which was unacceptable for the brand. By the time Tesla finally decided to release the Cybertruck, the production lines were overloaded, and problems with composite materials were compounded by new difficulties with the software calibration system, which had also not been sufficiently tested
over the last couple of months. But the other thing that this could potentially be is an attempt at readjustment or correction by the Trump administration, in that one of Trump's closest kind of allies and supporters, and someone who's clearly very influential in the administration, is coming out to kind of push back against the recently implemented policies. So I'm thinking, or maybe hopeful is the right word, that this might be a signal that the administration is considering walking back some of those policies.
Acceleration and braking problems, which soon became apparent after the model's launch, turned out to be just the tip of the iceberg. However, these defects were not the only ones. Safety and stability issues became more acute when the first drivers began reporting unpredictable acceleration, or that the accelerator pedal was sticking, causing dangerous situations on the road. Some drivers claimed that their cars began to accelerate for no apparent reason, and that they were unable to react in time. In one case, a car suddenly accelerated to 20 miles per hour, despite no pressure being applied to the pedal. This incident was the first sign of serious problems, and soon everything began to spiral out of control. For Tesla, these reports marked the beginning of a real crisis. Just a few weeks after deliveries began, the company was forced to admit that the accelerator pedal problem was much more serious than initially thought. Internal investigations revealed that the defect had been discovered during testing, but no decisions had been made on how to fix it. Meanwhile, amid growing complaints and reports of incidents, the company began receiving official inquiries from regulatory agencies such as the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. When the defect became public knowledge, the shock was felt not only among buyers, but also among experts and journalists, who began to say that Tesla, despite its achievements, had fallen into the deepest hole in its history. For a company that had built its reputation on innovation and always put quality first, such a mistake was a blow not only to the product, but also to its very philosophy. But the damage was not limited to a loss of reputation. It was the beginning of a broader crisis that affected not only people, but also Tesla's future.
Canada, the largest supplier of steel to the U.S., slapping new tariffs on $20 billion worth of U.S. goods that are sold in Canada. And the 27 countries of the European Union imposing retaliatory tariffs on up to $28 billion worth of U.S. goods sold in Europe, including Harley-Davidson motorcycles and Kentucky bourbon. President Trump with the Irish Prime Minister visiting the White House today. The president suggesting his tariffs won't stop here, saying, "Of course, I'm going to respond." And tonight, right here, the new poll showing 56% of Americans disapprove of President Trump's handling of the economy. The number's even worse now on the president's tariffs.
When the first incidents began to gain publicity, Tesla's factories in Texas suspended operations and production was frozen. This was a turning point, as stopping the entire production flow and halting all operations at such a large company at a time when it was undergoing one of its most high-profile advertising campaigns was completely unprecedented. It was an admission that the cars already built could not be safe to use. At the same time, as the company struggled to cope with the flood of information and decided on a full recall, an internal battle to make the right decisions was already in full swing. Many company employees began to speak openly about how the problems with the Cybertruck had been obvious from the start, and that the decision to launch it, despite the identified risks, was solely due to pressure from management. All of this only exacerbated the situation, and when all this information came to light, Tesla faced much more serious consequences than just a lack of trust. This moment, when promises and reality collided, was a turning point for the company. When the accelerator pedal problem became public knowledge, Tesla faced a real crisis that went far beyond a simple manufacturing defect. Shortly after the first reports of malfunctions began to surface, Tesla factories around the world slowed down their processes. But the real shutdown occurred at the Gigafactory in Texas, where Cybertruck assembly was suspended. This was not just a temporary slowdown. The factory literally came to a standstill. The line was shut down, and workers were instructed to suspend all Cybertruck operations. Vehicles that had already been assembled were quarantined, and those in the process of being assembled were left in a semi-finished state. For several weeks, panic reigned among employees and engineers. They waited for further instructions from management, but the silence from the upper echelons of the company spoke for itself. The situation within the company itself became critical. When news of the production freeze leaked to the media, the public, and owners of the first Cybertrucks began to panic. Thousands of cars that had been sold on pre-order were now at risk, and no one knew how long the pause would last.
We have accomplished more in 43 days than most administrations accomplished in 4 years or 8 years, and we are just getting started.
He praised all the domestic actions he has taken so far on immigration.
And I deployed the U.S. military and Border Patrol to repel the invasion of our country.
And spending cuts.
We are draining the swamp. It's very simple.
Against this backdrop, Tesla's management began to hastily develop plans to remedy the situation, but they faced a much more serious problem. Many employees who were involved only in the Cybertruck production process found themselves out of work. Employees were temporarily transferred to the assembly of other models, such as the Model Y, which added even more chaos to the workflow. These people, who specialized exclusively in the Cybertruck, now found themselves with nothing to do. Some of them began asking questions that went unanswered. Finding themselves in this vacuum, they felt not only forgotten, but also deprived of meaning in their work. There were cases where factory employees began to criticize management and openly state that they had been warned about potential problems with the Cybertruck long before its launch. But management ignored all their warnings. Under these conditions, the engineers and technicians began to do everything they could to hide their doubts and prevent further information leaks.
Worse than expected, 336 and 68 vehicles, 336,068 vehicles delivered in the first quarter for Tesla. For a point of reference, the street was expecting, the street account was expecting, based on analyst expectations.
However, such attempts at silence could not continue for long. Shortly after assembly was suspended, an open conflict began within the company. Internal memos surfaced confirming that the problems with the Cybertruck were not accidental, but the result of uncoordinated decisions. According to information leaked to the media, some employees working in quality control were removed from the project after trying to raise concerns about the safety and readiness of the vehicle for production. In one report, a former quality specialist claimed that several tests had not been completed due to tight deadlines, and that all documentation on these issues had been hidden from management. Initially, the company decided to cover up all these problems, trying to avoid a public apology for fear that it would cause even greater panic among buyers and investors.
Hey Diane, this investigation really just beginning, and one of the key elements will of course be the surveillance video, and investigators potentially have a lot of it to work with as they try to figure out what caused this fire. We know that surveillance footage has been turned over, including video from each of the cars, which could prove vital to understanding what happened here, because each vehicle has its own camera system that works even when the car is off, and 16 cars burned in this fire, and right now investigators don't know what caused it.
The recall situation became a real threat to Tesla's existence. The public, especially those who had already invested in the Cybertruck, couldn't believe that a product that promised to be a symbol of innovation was not only defective, but also potentially dangerous to operate. The media immediately began to spread the news. Social media was flooded with angry comments and videos of people who had received their cars and now didn't know what to do with them. Mass returns, questions about compensation, and complete customer dissatisfaction became a threat to a brand that was once synonymous with reliability and technological progress. Tesla's internal management, realizing the extent of the problem, began working hard to rectify the situation. However, promises of quick fixes and first-class service could not hide the fact that the company was not prepared to deal with the scale of its failures. It soon became clear that, for many customers, the car had become not just a disappointment, but a dangerous purchase.
Tesla shares have slumped by more than 9% amid a fall in sales in Europe. The electric vehicle maker posted lower sales across 5 European countries, including France and the UK. Joining us now to discuss this is CBS News foreign correspondent Remy Inocencio. Remy, why do we believe these sales are dropping? What's driving that?
Sure. Well, Errol, basically what Elon Musk has been talking about over the past, say, few months, ever since Donald Trump's election back to the White House, that has been fueling this anger, this frustration, some even say disgust towards Musk, and they're taking it out on Tesla. Tesla now feeling the pain. But because of what's happening here in Europe, Tesla sales fell by nearly half across the continent just last month, 45%.
But Ford wasn't the only one to benefit from Tesla's crisis. Rivian, recently perceived as a startup, managed to build the right strategy and present itself as a more stable option. This young player, previously considered one of the unfulfilled hopes of the electric vehicle market, immediately took advantage of Tesla's lag to spur interest in its R1T. Streams of buyers who were previously Tesla fans began switching to Rivian, purchasing their pickups as a more reliable alternative. This soon led to Rivian gaining the status of a brand that took care of its customers. The company's entire advertising strategy was built on Tesla's problems, and they instantly became perceived as leaders, despite their relatively short history in the market.
After Trump imposed those sweeping 25% tariffs on aluminum and steel imports, the European Union retaliating with tariffs on up to $28 billion of U.S. goods. Trump making it clear this isn't over, vowing to respond in kind with sweeping retaliatory tariffs early next month.
They're doing what they should be doing, perhaps, for the European Union, but it does create ill will. And as you know, we're going to be doing reciprocal tariffs. So whatever they charge us, we're charging them.
Canada also striking back with new tariffs on $20 billion worth of U.S. goods, mostly steel and aluminum, but also computers and sporting goods.
No matter how hard Tesla tried to restore trust with statements, promises, and temporary solutions, the essence of the problem remained the same. The company had lost its image as an innovative giant that could dictate terms to the entire market. The crisis affected not only consumers, but also shareholders and the very structure of the company.